excited to be with you today and share with you a new video that I want to do on still life. Now, the way I'm going to approach the still life is to take and draw with a black watercolor pencil. I actually prefer the General Kimberly. They seem to have the wettest and the nicest flowing line of them all. But basically any watercolor pencil should work. It doesn't have to be black. I just happen to like black, but it could be any color. And so going back a few years, this is a lesson I did where I started with the black watercolor pencil, and when I wet it, I just love this graphite going all over. It was upsetting to some of the students, but they got over it. And so what I basically did was it helped me free up and just enjoy letting the color and the graphite blend together. So really what we have here is one of my most favorite loves, and that is watercolor and drawing. So it combines the two. This is another example. This was probably done about 8 years later. But again, I dug out that black pencil again. These are both full sheets, and it was just so fun to draw these images and then just come in and paint them with abandon and let the black pencil and the watercolor combine together. And so this summer when I was thinking about my new lessons, I decided this is it. I am going to combine watercolor and drawing again for another fun experience. And really, the best subject matter for this whole experience is going to be still life. So about 10 years ago, I was in New Zealand with my friend Pauline, and we decided to do a still life together. And we just gathered a bunch of objects, and I gave myself permission to just treat it like an abstract painting. In other words, just to build the shapes up, add things where I want, color where I want, textures where I want, in focus, out of focus. And we just had a wonderful, wonderful day. And I did this still life, and then I thought, well, I'm not sure how I could teach this to a group. I need to think about this a little more. And after about 10 years, I came up with a lesson I'm just in love with. So this whole thing was drawn, first of all, with the black watercolor pencil. I wet it. You'll see me do it very briefly. And then as the color flowed in all directions, I just started adding the color wet into wet and just let it have its will. It could go any way it wanted to. And in the meantime, I was still thinking about all these abstract concepts about maybe a cruciform composition, relating colors in the subject into the background. So all the elements of design did come into play. And as each one of these progressed, I just enjoyed it more and more. It was fun to start adding things like radishes. Our son just opened a restaurant called the Fat Radish, so I had to do that one. That was fun. And then things happened, like I had this what looked like a letter here, but I didn't know what to write on it, so I just found a stamp, stuck it in the color, stamped it on there, and I think it worked out quite well. And then I sprayed into it, so it was kind of wet and dry looking. So things like, I just have things handy, like pieces of cardboard, just in case I want to add a texture somewhere. Some of these textures were created with wax paper. So I know that a lot of you have these skills in your experience. So pull them out, just have a good time with this. Here's another one. I'm always thinking about how does this vase of flowers relate to a table? What can I put in the foreground to maybe integrate with the piece? I always try to do colors that relate to it. I'm not sure I was successful here with the yellow pears, but yellow and purple are complements. So see, I can just about get by with anything. And this was fun. I had just gotten home from France, and we had gone to the market, and there were these beautiful pieces of garlic that we happened to put on this plate. And so it was just a combination of some repeating some of the colors and stripes. The blue was a perfect ploy for the yellow flowers, and then I repeated the blue in the plate. So all these things, as you're doing it, it just comes to you. It's really fun. Some of these are still, as of yet, unfinished because there's something about this unfinished look that I like. So I don't rush into finishing these. I know some people like to start a painting and finish it and move on to the next. I don't have any problem with having literally hundreds of paintings around, and I just grab one when I feel like painting on that painting that day. And here again you can see how I'm repeating the blues in the background, repeating the reds in the background, and then I try to get a lot of bounced color all over. So it's, you can see I even splattered a little bit of the pink into the blue background while it was still wet. And again, this was a great experience. I was in New Zealand, and this lady brought in this beautiful garlic from her garden. And when we set it on a piece of white watercolor paper, the sun shone on it and had these great cast shadows. So this was just kind of fun, integrating the shadows with the subject, and again repeating colors in the background. Now here's one that as of yet I haven't, this is like the first hour. The drawing is wet, the colors are added, and now I let it dry and come back. And I'm not sure what to do with this one. I've got to think about some kind of a table or pattern. Maybe I can add some more objects, or maybe I could leave it. And this is the last one I did. I just got home from Spain. The poppies were everywhere along the roadside. And so it was a combination of a photograph and the actual poppies. And it was just a beautiful experience to sit there with the poppies in front of me and all the color around me. And you can see how important it is. When you have something as bright as the poppies, you really have to push that color, like reflected light off the glass, pulling some of that into the curtains, even into the woodwork. Don't be afraid when it's wet to just bounce that color all over the place. Okay, so this is what my picture usually looks like when I start. I've been having all the fun of drawing, and I'm not afraid to come in and do some areas with a little bit of shading. And one of the things I love, I'm still kind of a traditionalist. When I did landscapes years ago and in college, it's pretty popular learning experience. I still like coming in and showing possibly some of the cast shadows, and that just adds a little more dark into your picture. And I always like to identify where is my table going to be, and then I kind of wing the rest of it. But I really do like that I love these glass jars. And see, the idea that I've already started to establish some of these values and show the circle of the water, maybe a little more darks in the water itself. So I start showing that in the drawing. Another really fun aspect about working with still life is that you can integrate personal items into it. So I did ask the students if they would consider bringing in lace or cut glass. My mother used to had a beautiful collection of cut glass, and I'm looking forward to integrating some of those. And this is fun. This was my husband's teddy bear when he was a little boy. So this, I mean, that is probably, maybe I better not guess. But anyway, I did add that little teddy bear in there, and I'm looking forward to adding a few more objects into this one. So this is the one that I chose to do today. It's actually June 3rd, and right now the poppies are starting to pop out, and so I wanted to add some poppies. And the lupines, which are really fantastic. We happen to have some of the most beautiful lupines, and these are awesome flowers. The colors, of course, are great. Now when I'm drawing, especially a lupine, I just left a little bit here for me to finish. So when I start drawing in all of these different petals, a lot of people draw them like it got ran over by a truck. They just put one of these on one side, and they're just like little Pac-Man. Then they just put another one on the other side. And the thing is, you have to remember that some of these are right in front and cover up that stem. others will have a very long stem, and who knows how far out that'll go. They usually are in two parts. You can see them as when they're not quite opened, they're one, and then as they open, they're two. And then very often they'll be overlapping each other. So don't be afraid to just push it to the limits. Add, and then you can often see some of them hiding behind. So I try to show all aspects of this when I'm drawing this. And we're getting to the little immature ones here. And then at some point they just get really tight, one after another. So this is our lupine, the beloved flower of northern Wisconsin. There used to be a factory that sent the seeds all over the world, about 6 blocks down from me. So I've been watching lupines my whole life. Okay, with the drawing basically done, I did add in 3 poppies just because I wanted the seasonal flower, and I love the red. So I added another one hiding back here. And then I've added these gorgeous, oh my gosh, they're apple blossoms. It's hard to tell, but those are apple blossoms. And then just for a little foreground, I see I've gotten a little careless here with the water too. Just for the foreground, I have laid down one of the lupines, and I thought it would be kind of fun just to have maybe some kind of a tabletop, and I wanted it at a different level than the water. This is my water level, so I'm just going to carry this through here. Hopefully that's lining up. So I'm going to suggest that there is a tabletop, and I probably will just throw a few of these little guys around on the table because they are constantly falling. So I'm just going to take a minute now and draw a few of those guys in that may have fallen. And I was even thinking of maybe adding another one of these lupine. These are really beautiful. So if I do kind of a zigzag here, I think that'll be nice. So I'm just going to show they are actually a circular pattern, which can be really boring if you're not careful. So again, I tried to have things overlap, and then I might leave a big space. Then I might do an extra long one, and then I might do a little shorter one. So it's amazing how many ways can you put variety into something as simple as a circular leaf. And of course, overlapping, very important. So I kind of like this now. We've got something, maybe I could do one more up here, leading us to the edge of the page, down, up to this edge, and I'll put some pattern on this. So we're ready to get started. Now this, to me, is the most critical part. First of all, wet the back. Don't forget this step, wet the back. So using my big 4-inch hockey brush, I love this brush. It's actually some kind of natural fiber here, and it's going to give me a really nice wet surface in a very short time. So I bought this brush a long time ago, and there's hardly a day goes by that I don't use it. So I think of it as an essential part of my tools. Okay, now comes the fun, and it's really important that you do this very slowly. I'm a little concerned because I did such a tight composition. If I'd have used bigger flowers, it might have worked better, but we're going to take a chance. So you can see that I've got this brush wet, and as it rolls over, ooh, look what's happening. Love that. So here's how I'm doing it. I dip it in the water, and I just let it run until it no longer drips. Takes a while. Then I give it a little shake, and each time I do this, I start, and see how I'm just pulling the brush. I am not working it back and forth, and if I'm lucky, I get these little white spots. Oh, I love those. So now I gotta wait for this to continue, finish dripping, give it a little shake, just lay it on and pull. I'm not pressing in any way. I'm just letting this happen. And to me, this is the best part. Mesmerizing. There we go. Just pull it across, let it happen. Now if you see you've missed a spot, just as I said it, look at that, I missed a spot. What I would do then is just spray it. Just maybe touch it and spray it. Because as soon as you go back with that brush, you're going to damage your whole design. And this is the part that's hard. You can't, most of us wet a paper by going back and forth. But this is critical. You've got to just take your time and do it like this, very slowly. Now this is when the students get concerned. Oh, but look at how dark it is. But the thing is, it isn't dark. It's gonna look great. You have to trust that this is gonna work. And if it doesn't, as I hear myself saying all the time, is it's just a piece of paper. Do another one. There we go. So there's our next step. Okay, so now is the fun part. Go into your brightest colors, like here's some red, quin coral. Put some up here. Maybe even a little alizarin crimson, although that's too dark. I'm going to stick with the brighter colors. In fact, I might just jump into my Scarlet Lake. This is such a pretty color. An interesting thing is there are colors on my palette that don't move in water. And these are all colors with the exception of alizarin crimson. They don't move in water. Isn't that crazy? So now I want to get some of these nice bright colors into the apple blossoms down here. So as quickly as I can, I'm just going to put them in, and I want these colors to move. Now every now and then I have some luck. If these get too dark, you can try the old thirsty brush technique, which will lift out some of the color. And there are always a few people really concerned about this. Oh, I'm losing too much color. So don't forget, you can do the thirsty brush. But my biggest, what I'm looking for is this color to move. And you have to do it right away so it's wet, while the paper's wet. So don't be thinking about anything else but getting started on this, on putting in these colors. Now I've also got some lovely, got some dark on my brush. Time to lift a little of that up. Now some colors move a lot in water. And Scarlet Lake and Permanent Rose do not. So when I get a little bit of this color bleeding out like this, I'm happy. I want it to bleed out. So now I'm purposely going to use Winsor Yellow, which is a phthalo yellow. And this color actually moves a lot in water. So I'm just going to come in and approach some of these very yellow-green leaves from the honeysuckle. They're really a nice light yellow-green. So I'm just going to quickly put that in. And then the leaves for these guys are very dark, so I'm going to save that for later. Now another color, that you'll notice the lupines have this very pinky, purpley color. So instead of using purple or pink, what I'm going to do is start with the pink and then come in and add the blue to make it purple. Now these are not moving as much as I'd like. I'm going to cheat a little bit and just wet it with my sprayer because I want some of these colors to move. The tops of these lupines are very yellow. So I'm going to come in right now with my Winsor Yellow, and then the stem is actually quite yellow-green, but then there's a lot of the purple in that stem too. Oh good, I'm starting to get some fun stuff here. We like that. So I just bounce around one color to the next, whatever excites me. I want to get some of this yellow on the stem here. And of course, I want to reflect some of that into the water. It's time to do, this is permanent rose again. I'm just going to touch it into those lupines. Over here too. Oops, now see, these are starting to get dry already. It's hard to believe. So I think I'm going to give them a little spray again. When I see my paper kind of buckling up, I lift it up, press it down again. You'll notice I'm doing this all with a very small brush. This is only about a size 8. So I don't want to work with too big of a brush. When you touch a brush full of color onto a wet surface, it just takes off. So the bigger the brush, it's too much paint. You want to be able to control it. Now I love these guys. They're actually kind of a pinky, not quite as purple, but very pink. And those are the honeysuckle. So I'm going to come in and get some of those honeysuckle painted. Of course they're going to run all over. I like that. Oh, I'm having fun with all these pinks. Love it. And then I also have some kind of a yellow flower here, and I don't know what it is. I'm sure it's some kind of roadside flower. I'll pull it out and show it to you. Some of you flower people will know. I'm not sure what this says, but I like the colors and I like the yellow in with the purple. And my friend Kimmy Metropolis is the one who put this together for me. I'm just so grateful. So fun. Okay, these are going to be kind of yellow up here. So I want to get more of these lovely yellows, yellow flowers. They're here and there. Oh, isn't that fun? I like that. I just encourage it a bit. I think it's time to think about adding some color into the background. So now I am going to switch to a bigger brush, and I'm just going to come in. If I have some pinks, like I have here, I definitely want to repeat some of that in the background. And I love the yellows bleeding out. Ooh, let's get some more of that. I like the way it combines with that graphite. Oh, so pretty. Let's see, maybe we can get some more of that pretty yellow down here. Of course, I don't want to forget about my foreground. I want to get some reflection in that water from the flowers. Okay, I'm going to go back to my small brush now, and I'm going to come in and put some blue into the shadow side. So just for the heck of it, I'm going to say the sun's coming this way. I've got yellows there. So that would mean I'm going to put more of the blues and the purpley colors coming away from that. Sun, so that would put the purple side over here. I'm just adding now a little cobalt blue. Not on both sides, just on my shadow side. Now I'm thinking about some lovely greens. Manganese blue is a fantastic color. I frequently will use manganese to give me a nice little background boost. It's a beautiful blue. And one of the things I like about manganese is it granulates. When you work really wet like this, you get this lovely granulation. So I'm just going to come in and add just a little bit of this lovely manganese blue. And it's picking up yellows, it's picking up pinks. We're just going to let it happen. This is only an underpainting, and we want things like that to happen. Let's pull in some of this blue, work it through here. come out over here. Ooh, it's starting to feel good. So maybe I'll end the blue here at the table, leaving that lighter. Same over here. I'll pull some of these blues in. And then that feels good. Now I've got blues going across, and I'm starting to get some nice kind of purpley pinks up there. Let's encourage some more of that. That's a little more cobalt. And see, I love these little whites all over. I frequently save large areas of white paper because I just love an unfinished look like that. Okay, now it's time to come in with more color. I'm going to just go for a little more color now in some of the areas I'm more interested in, which is right here. My apple blossoms coming forward here. Ooh, that feels good. Maybe a few here in my foreground. Lupines do come in pink and white and purple. I see I forgot to paint my stem. So I'm going to come in here with some yellow. And now I'm going to mix some Antwerp with areolan yellow, which is a yellow that doesn't move much on a wet surface. And I think I'll just try adding some of the greens here. You can see I'm not too worried about perfection. I'm trying to keep it loose. You'll notice I have not dabbed one time with the tissue when something looked like it was out of control. You gotta do that. Put that tissue away. Looks pretty good. So now by pressing, release, tip, press, release, tip, press, release, tip, press, release. I can just come in here and paint these so quickly. So a nice brush with a nice tip. You start with the tip, you press, and you release. Start with the tip, press, and release. And you can do these in no time at all. Pretty fun. Add a few more darks here and there. Now we have some very dark leaves here behind the apple blossoms. They've got red mixed in with them. So if I take some Antwerp and add some of that same red into it, I can get this really nice, warm, dark part of it. We're getting close now to a few more fun tricks, and we're basically done with our underpainting. So again, I always make sure, lift it and set it down. I never tape my paper down or staple it into a board and pre-soak it. I just wet it on the back, wet it on the front, and it will lay perfectly flat. So now for my last death-defying act here, I'm going to mix up some darker colors. This is areolan yellow mixed with indigo. Now these are two colors that don't move very much in water on a wet surface. And I would just like to do maybe a few of these grassy shapes. Should have brought some grass in. One of my favorite things to paint. And it's the same idea. You put the tip down, and then you press, and then you release. Tip, press, go around your subject, tip, press, and release. So this is just going to give us some kind of fun little roadside look. And you know, it's so easy to get these all in a row. So grasses now are a good time to cross over. Maybe this time I'll start here, come up through here, cross over, because it's too easy to just fill it all in. Tip, press, oops. Maybe I will get to use a tissue one time here. So tip, press, release. Press, tip, press, and release. Tip, press, and release. And try to get these to kind of dance around, interlock with each other. It's kind of what it's all about. And then eventually when this dries, see, I'm going to come in and get some really beautiful dark darks that will go in between, pop out some of these other shapes. And I love this little grassy, ferny looking thing here. So I'll put some of the darks on that. And then some of the darks that are in my water could now be identified. And maybe a few leaves I didn't even draw, I can paint in. Now I just wanted to show a couple other little tricks. This is a fun one. So this is a store-bought stencil, and I don't even know where it came from, but I thought it caught my eye. I thought it could be kind of a cool pattern for this tablecloth. So what I'm going to do is set it down, and then I'm just going to protect the edge of this. Don't really care about the rest of it. And using 100 grit sandpaper and just a soft blue, it'll be like a little tabletop here. I'm going to just spray in a little bit of this blue. Now this is a woodless watercolor pencil made by Color. And these are the Kimberly Generals again. So I'm just going to repeat some of these colors. This is a little bit of the purpley color. Oops, and you don't want to have, you want this to be, the surface has to be wet, and it also needs to have your stencil very close to the subject, so that you're going to get the benefit. Now, let's see what we've got here. Hey, cool. A suggestion of a little tablecloth. So I'm just going to carry that through again. Just set it here. Notice I'm not worried about getting every little detail. So we'll just pull it out, leaving some white over here. So that's the blue, and here's the pink. Now if you want to, you don't like that speckly look, you can come in and wet it and soften it. But I actually like that speckly look. So that's kind of cool. The other thing you can do is if you want it darker, you can just come in with a fine mister. Now a fine mister has a very narrow inner, and I don't just point and shoot like this. I hold it up away, and with my hand moving, I give it just a little gentle mist. And you can see as I do that, the colors are actually getting a little bit darker. And so I would say eventually I'm going to come back and make that background considerably darker as a nice contrast. And that'll be fun. So just to give you an idea, it'll look something like that. And then I will eventually come in and crisp up. So what I'll do is after this dries, I'll come in and show you the final touches. Now, before we end, I'm looking it over, and while it's wet, you want to think about, have you done everything you want to do while it's still wet? And I really enjoy these real out of focus grassy things, and two of them aren't enough. I need one more. The other thing I could do is possibly add one of these little guys. They're kind of cute the way they hang down. But I think I'll just do the grass, keep it simple. So again, this is my combination of areola yellow with a little bit of indigo added. And those two colors do not move in water. Now I wouldn't do one in between. Remember I talked about crossing over. This one I did in between so you could see. But it's really, really important to do these so that they cross over. You can see already this is just really melted out. So I'm going to do another one over here. I'll load it up. I'll just start about here and I'm going to cross over and tip up, tip, press, tip, press, tip, press, tip, press, overlap it, come back. So let's see what we can do to have some fun here. I think that's going to do it. Now there are other things you can do like salt. I think we all know about salt. And I'm getting some effects almost like salt that are kind of fun. But I think what I'll do is just put a little bit of the salt in where some of those yellow flowers are. I don't have too many of those. Here's another one. Here's another one. So we'll see what that does. Okay, now these are some quarter sheet size little drawings I did in Spain, and it was really fun. We had the fresh lemons in the backyard, and these were all flowers all over. So I just drew them and had some fun. Now these are just the underpaintings, and it's time to come back and think about how I want to finish them. And you know, the interesting thing is, a lot of these, this is just what happens in an underpainting. And you can see the whites stay fairly white. If I really want to pop that out, I can just keep going darker and darker. But there's something magical about these underpaintings that are special. I love these edges and just the way the color seeps around. So one of the things I've done is I've given myself permission to stop anytime I want to. I don't have to go back and finish it and make it perfect and darker and the edges hard and all that. If I like something with that real spontaneous look, I leave it. So on this one, the only thing I'm going to do is I'm going to wet this lovely stoneware cup. And I'm going to just put in some colors that repeat some of these colors. And that's, the rest of it, I'm going to leave. So I just want to send that out to all of you. When you get something you like, stop. Give yourself permission to just stop at any point. Okay, well this is exciting to get back to this underpainting. As you can see, everything's dried approximately 18 to 20% lighter. So what we really are crying out for now are some darks. And I don't want to do too much. See, I like this wet look. However, I'm going to push it a little bit. Okay, so what we're going to do is come in here with some of these really intense colors. For example, this is Scarlet Lake, absolutely gorgeous color. And by just putting this color down next to the next petal, what you can do then is wet your brush, shake it out, and I got a new little trick. I learned this from a gal named Denise. This is an old sock that I cut and put on my arm. Everybody thinks I've got some kind of handicap, but actually this is what I touch, just so I have only enough moisture left in my brush to give me this nice lost edge. So I wet my brush, shake it out, touch it on my little sock here, and look at that. What I can do then is leave these edges nice and soft. Let me do another one for you. For example, over here, I'll pop in this darker, brighter value, wet my brush, shake it out, touch it on here. And the reason I just touch it is now there's still moisture left in the brush, but it's not like I wiped it dry. So now when I start out here, outside that edge, and push it back, I get that nice lost edge. We'll do it one more time here. I'd like to pop it a little brighter all along here. And then with wetting, shaking, just touching it, coming in and losing that edge. You can see how in a very short time I can just pop this out into kind of a nice little bright, much brighter package. Now this here would look better just a little darker. Maybe the whole thing darker because we're against kind of a light background. So you just have to make those choices. Wet it, shake it, touch it. And I gotta thank my friend Denise one more time. I love this little trick with the old socks. Here's another little, I really want to come in here and pop out the poppies over here too. Here they're kind of hidden behind some of the other things. So kind of a hit and miss, come in there, pop it a bit, wet my brush, shake it, touch it, come back in, lose the edges, and you can see in a very short time we've pretty much accomplished all we need to accomplish. Now the next thing I want to do is to come in and really pop out some of the darks, especially the darks surrounding these lovely the apple blossoms. And you can see these shapes here that are drawn in just need to be darker. So now the paper's dry, so colors like Antwerp Blue and Quinacridone Gold, I'm going to go to the Quin Gold and Antwerp Blue. These colors will give me a lovely dark, a little more gold. You can see it's kind of a nice olivey dark. And then what I want to do is I'll test it out, but see, I think it's just going to be a little bit too green looking. I have to remember that there's a lot of red in these petals. So now what I'm going to do is just come in and add a little bit of my alizarin crimson, just push it right in there, and see now I have a reddish green, much more appropriate for what I'm looking at here. So now it's just a matter of coming in here and maybe popping out a few of these darker greens, and I'll just do enough so you can get the flavor of what I'm going to try to accomplish here. And we'll just pop in some of these darks, because just a few darks and we're going to be done. And I'll gather up a little more. And I love the same old number 8 round. For example, I can just put the tip here and press, and I can make all these lovely shapes in just a few minutes. Love it. And with the tip, it allows me to get in and do some of these tight corners that I need. And it will also allow me to do some of these lovely shapes over here. So I moved in close again so you can see how easily you can do this. Just by pressing, putting the tip down and pressing, you can pick up pretty much all of these shapes. Tip, press, and release. You might have to come in and do a little correcting. Tip, to get around something, you'll just use the tip. But in most cases, just by pressing, it'll get thicker, and then by lifting up again, it'll get thinner. So that'll be definitely how I would come in and approach some of these areas in here where I'd like to get a little bit darker. Wet my brush, shake it out, touch it on my little sock here, lose the edges, because I want to keep it light in some areas. Like I would keep it light in a few areas, but then I would make it darker in a few areas too, just to get that nice variety. And it's this lost edge that gives us that possibility. So you can go dark, light, dark, and it's these important lost edges that keep it tied together so nicely. So now I'm ready to think about creating some of the dark versus light areas. For example, do I want this glass jar darker than our table? And just looking at it, I would say yes, because I kind of like the table the way it is, kind of suggested. So if I make this jar just a little bit darker, it's going to pop out. Then if I make the edge of the table a little darker, that's also going to be a nice contrast. So I'm just going to start by mixing, for example, a little of my Windsor orange with a little cobalt blue. This is a common mixture I use to make grays. and in this case kind of a cool gray. And so I think if I just come in here now and make this edge of the jar just a little bit darker, it'll pop it out, saving some lights, coming around some of these objects here. I shouldn't have put those darks in, but too late now. This is life in the fast lane with watercolor. I'm going to shake my brush, touch it here, and then I always like to come in and lose these edges. See how easily that can be done? I can lose an edge instantly just by having my brush wet and popping it right in here, losing it. So I kind of like what's happening now. You can see that this is darker than the background. And then I can always pick up a few of these stems, make them a little bit darker than in the light areas. And one of my cool little tricks, this is really fun. If you want the water to look like it's wet and then it's dry above it, here's what I do, is I wet just the water. So I just come in with a little wetness. Then I'll mix up, for example, a nice dark stem. I'll just use a little Quin Gold again with a little Antwerp Blue. And I'm going to make this nice, not too dark, but what we'll do is we'll pull this darker stem down. Now watch what happens. See, it's crisp up here because we're on a dry area, but look what happens when I touch the water. It's going to start fuzzing out and look like it's in water. It's kind of a cool trick. So you wet the water and just let it do its thing when you touch it. And then I usually keep building up the dark a little bit. And it usually works pretty well. Actually, I kind of like it. Let's do it again. So I've got another stem coming in here. This stem is going to be dark in the dry, and as soon as I hit the water, it's going to get lost. Wet it, shake it, touch it. Sometimes you need a little help with the lost. Yeah, that's working pretty well. Now some of the other areas that need to be darkened are some of these lovely lupines. Now the lupines I'm working with are very dark purple. So if I just take a little permanent magenta, and if I add in a little French ultramarine blue right next door here, you can see I'll go between a warm purple and a cool purple. And if I want to just start bringing in some of these that are in the background here as a little bit darker, that'll be really nice. It'll just pop things out. So all I have to do is kind of follow some of these the drawing that I've presented here and go a little bit darker. It'll make a really nice contrast. And even the stem back this deep would read as a dark. So we'll just pull that in. Even some of these leaves would read as a dark. So I'll just take advantage of some of this drawing I did and come in here and put in some of these nice darks. As we're going up, I'm going to warm it up a bit. Now I'm going to go into more of the pure permanent magenta. And some of the stems coming out. And then as I continue, wet it, shake it, I'm just going to start going a little bit lighter because I kind of like what's happening up here. I don't want to lose all this nice soft stuff going on. So as I move up here, I'm going to do less and less. Pull some of those purples into the stem itself. And we'll just keep pulling up a few more of these darker shapes. And won't be long, we're going to run out of the lupine. So you can see I love all those colors that have just sort of melted out into the background. So I would go from this darker color, going lighter and lighter until I just end up with what's there, a lost edge. So there are a few more darks that I'd like to put in right in this center area here. One is the same thing, this wonderful lupine leaf. So again, if I just start at the tip, press and release, start, press and release, we should be able to kind of pull in just a few more of these lovely darks here in the center. And some of the stems, of course, will have to get a little bit darker. Here's a lovely stem leading up to this poor guy. If you could see my poppy now, it's had it. It only lasted for a little while. Okay, so now we have this darker. So now we have this darker against a lighter background. And I think what I'll do is just take that same color. This happens to be the manganese blue. And you can see the lovely granulation I was talking about. So now if I just come in here with the same color, this is manganese blue. It's not a very dark blue, but it's absolutely gorgeous. So, oops, sorry. Basically what I want to do is just pop this out a little bit darker than the table. But see, I don't want to lose all those lovely whites. So again, the same technique. I shake my brush out, touch it on my little sock here, and I start outside that edge and push it back. So I get a beautiful, beautiful lost edge. So see, all that original underpainting is not affected, but I'm getting this darker value to pop out the table. Let's try it again over here. We're going to be darker along the table edge, and we'll be darker as we go around the tip of this rascal. And we'll go a little bit further. But I don't want to go all the way to the edge. I don't want to make it perfect. So again, wash my brush out, shake it, touch it, start outside this edge and push it back. Start outside this edge, and you can see in just a very short time we've pretty much done the same thing. We popped out the edge of the table and it's looking pretty good. So now it's just a matter of deciding how far do we want to go with this. Okay, this is a painting that you saw earlier, and I'm actually quite pleased with the painting pretty much the way it is. I don't want to come in and make a lot of darks and changes, but this definitely looks unfinished. And this is a picture of what I was working with. This was a wonderful little display. Kim put this together again for me when we were over in Spain. And so I've got this ceramic mug that we put them in. And then I just added some figs. So what I want to do is just a little bit of popping out. So for example, these figs have a lot of purples in them. They also have a lot of cool and warm purples. So if I were to just put a little bit of this purpley tone, a little cooler on one side, a little warmer on the other, and we'll just start it. And then again, wet my brush, shake it out, touch it. And then what I love to do is this lost edge so that you're just blending it into what's already here. This is really fun. So you can see with just very little effort, that just helps to pop it out so nice. And then this probably needs to be just a little bit darker over here. So we'll do the same thing again. We'll put just a little bit of that same kind of, a little bit of a purpley tone. This one over here has more of a reddish tone. So I think what I'll do is put a little red in with the purple and then lose the edges. I'm always losing edges. That it isn't too repetitious, but there's so often I see edges that are not necessary. I really like that lost edge look. And then maybe just a little touch over here I would like to pop that out just a little darker, and that'll be it. Now, very often when you're doing still lifes, you'll find that you have not a clear jar, but an object. It could be a lovely old pot from the garden, whatever. But what I usually do when I have an object is I wet it first. So now the only thing wet is the object. And then I'm going to put in some of the colors. So I like to do this because it sort of simulates or emulates the way we painted this underpainting. So what I'm going to start with now is some quinacridone burnt orange. That's a color that's already in the picture, like over here. Okay, I just popped a little bit of that same color now back into my figs over here. See, I already like it. That's pretty cool. This is just Quin burnt orange, one of my favorite colors. And just by dropping that in and letting it roll from the outside to the inside, I'm going to pick up a lovely light on it. And then the other thing that's going to happen is I'm going to repeat some of these other colors. I think I'm going to change the pot. If you look at the pot, it's actually lighter at the bottom, but too bad. I'm going to make it darker at the bottom. And over here. Now, one of the things I want to do is I want to pick up these same lovely purpley tones. So as soon as I lose this edge here, I'm going to come in with those same purpley tones. And I think it's important to do that, to kind of repeat the same colors that you have in your picture. Now, I sure hope this doesn't look foreign. I'm trying to keep it looking pretty comfortable. You can see some of the throwing lines. That's kind of fun to do while it's still wet. I was a potter for 30 years, so see, this feels good to me, being a stoneware pot like this. Can't beat it. And I think that might be all we need to do. We could even put a little bit of the pinky tones in here, just to pull in some of those. And then see up here, I want to lose some of these edges. I want this to have a feeling of pretty much lost edges. And this handle is going to be quite a bit darker. That's probably enough right there. So that's how I would go about finishing a painting like this. Just do as minimal as I can. I would probably come in and touch up a few more of the edges just to make it look like the same painting. And again, I'll show you this one when I finish it too. Okay, so off camera, I just did a few more touches, added some highlights on this part, which is one of my favorites. Put a few more tonal washes on some of the things in the immediate foreground, and a few more darks in here to kind of pop out the focal area. And really, I did very little on anything else. What you see there is the underpainting. I decided to push this into more of a blue lupine, so I added a manganese up here, which I think is a nice bounce to the background. See, it gives a repetition of that color. And then everything else is just simply the same colors that were in the underpainting, but slightly darker, just to pop them out a bit. So I hope you enjoyed watching this still life presentation. I also said I'd show you my other one. Now this is the other one I showed you, and you can see now when the colors dried, they went quite a bit lighter. But I made sure that all the edges were softened so that it still looked like it was the alla prima style underpainting that we did in just a very short time, because I really want to keep that alla prima flavor. I don't want to come in and make it look like a tightly finished, perfect still life. I'm trying to keep this really wet to wet style going. So, hope you've enjoyed this, and I hope you have some good luck with painting your own still lifes. check out our online store at karlynholman.com to find all the supplies that you saw here today, as well as our specials, upcoming workshops, and much more. I'm Karlyn Holman, bidding you farewell. Thank you for watching.